Wow. Can you share the story about Ari?
Yeah. So as a lot of people, well, Ari was when he first represented me, was at ICM, and a couple of, I'd say about 3 or 4 years, a couple of years later, he's still representing me, and the Seinfeld, one of the Seinfeld seasons had just ended, and it's 6 o'clock in the morning, and I'm hearing this knock at the door. I'm going, 6 o'clock in the morning, who's knocking? And I go down and I open the door, and it's Ari, already in a suit and tie, with 2 bodyguards behind him, and Ari is holding under his arm a big stack of files. And at the time, I didn't know what was going on. And he said, come on, we're taking a walk. I said, just come in. It's 6 o'clock in the morning. He said, no, we're taking a walk. So we're walking through the streets of Santa Monica, and he's saying to me, I'm starting my own agency. I'm leaving ICM. I said, what's under your arms? He said, that's the files I'm taking with me. I said, of what? He said, it doesn't matter. What became known to the world after that was he stole the ICM files and basically was trying to take every client he could take, basically. Yeah. And the agency he started was called Endeavor. And that day, he hadn't booked or rented any office spaces yet, so he was working in the back of somebody else's office. And he said to me, I want you to come with me. This is my first stop. I said, I'm your first stop? And he said, you're my first stop. I want you to come with me. And I thought about it, and I said, okay, go with him, I guess. And then 2 days later, in all the trades, Variety, Hollywood Reporter, all those things, this was like pre-social media, basically. It was like everything was hard copy. You read about it. And they announced that he was starting his own agency, the whole thing about the files and everything, and it listed 6 or 7 people that he was taking with him. My name wasn't on that list in the article. And I called him, I said, where's my name? He said, well, I didn't write the article. I said, come on, Ari, you give them the information. Like, what's that about? He said, I don't know. And because I got so turned around, I contemplated leaving him.
Right.
You know, the whole thing became insane. And the person who was his assistant at ICM then took over for him at ICM, named Richard White, who 2 years later went over to Endeavor and to this day now runs all TV, everything for Ari over there. But basically what I did was I told Ari at that time, well, I can't make the article. Why would I be with you? I'll go with this kid. And as I was contemplating doing all of that, and some time went by, he ended up going over there anyway. So we all ended up back together again anyway.
Okay.
But
so you were with the kid?
I stayed with the kid for about 6 or 7 months. I left Ari, and which wasn't the smartest thing to do. But, and then a year and a half later, we're all back together again, and you could just tell our relationship isn't the same as it used to be.
Right.
And which leads to this story. But he did get me, the two of them got me this big pilot deal with this comedian who was on Mad TV at the time named Artie Lang. And Artie Lang, there were all sorts of information about him. This is, I'm not spilling beans or anything. I mean, he had a big drug issue. And, but Fox had given him this huge pilot deal, and he hadn't signed off on any writer to write it for him. And Ari said, do you know Artie Lang? I said, well, I know who he is. He said, go in and meet with him. He said, because he hasn't chosen any writer. Maybe you'll have something in common with him. I don't know. So I go and meet him. But before I go, I'm listening to some of the stuff, and I'm realizing, he's a guy from the New York area, and he was a huge St. John's fan.
Okay.
Basketball fan. That was my team growing up. I knew everybody that had ever played there. And as soon as
Mullen played for them, right?
Mullen played for them, yep. As soon as I started to meet with him, I started just talking St. John's history. And you could just see him go, and he gets on his phone, he calls his agent, said, I'm hiring him, he's the writer. He hadn't even read my material. I just knew about St. John's, and
that was it.
He said, we're in. Anyway, simultaneously during that period, I had agreed to write and direct a film for my pal Boom Boom Mancini, and it was a remake of this old boxing legendary John Garfield film called Body and Soul, which was a famous film. This was the remake. I don't have John Garfield, I got Boom Boom Mancini. He's, he's my friend. And he had done a lot behind the scenes to help me because my wife had been diagnosed with cancer some years earlier and had it for 23 years till her passing a few years ago. And I needed to keep the insurance going. And the only way to keep that going through the Writers Guild was to make a certain amount, minimum amount. And Ray Mancini, during some of the slower years, worked with me to create, they're going to come for me this afternoon, I know it by the time I get home. We created these companies, basically, that became signatories of the Guild. It was like a whole process, but I read the bylaws of the Guild so carefully that I found out this could work. And it also, you also had to not be married at the time to have her qualify for what was then, I forgot what the term is for the 18 months of insurance you're allowed to get when you're not employed. It's got some, I forgot the term. Mm-hmm. Anyway, Mancini and I created these companies where we ran film projects through there and ran the money through there. So the Guild would see, oh, they're working on Guild signatory projects. And so they'd keep her insurance going.
Oh, okay. That was dope.
And Ray would, and for about 6 or 7 years, Mancini was working with me. So there was no way I was going to not do that film for him. And Showtime was a Showtime movie. He said, we're only doing it with you. And they said, don't get a big head. It's not because you're the greatest director around. Nobody else wants to work with this guy. So I said, I'm doing it. I can't say no. I have to do it. And I told Ari that. And he said, if you go and do that movie and don't just focus here on this pilot, then we are really through. And I said, I got to. I promised him I got to. And I did. And that was the end of my relationship with Ari.
And did you explain what you were doing to him?
Yeah,
and all
absolutely. He didn't care. He didn't care. He said, I need you down here just working on this pilot. So what I would do was I would do 3 days down here, get on the plane, fly to Reno where we were filming, shoot 4 days there, come back. So I was doing, I mean, it was a lot. It was a lot. But I also, was getting paid for 2 huge projects. But in retrospect, I have no regrets about going off to do that movie and losing the art thing because he was my pal, Mancini, and he had done such a solid for my family. No way I'm saying no.
Right.
Would you say that right now you are blackballed from the industry or not?
Well, here's the thing. People are blackballed from the industry until you suddenly show up on their front steps with something they want badly enough. So blackballed is strong. But I will say to you that my television career stopped at that point. That was the end of TV. And I needed to figure out another way to get back in this business. So I did a couple other movies and then I went back to playwriting, and which has always been my passion, but not following Ari's edict about dropping the Showtime movie. Yeah, it cost